Saudi Aramco's long-awaited IPO is finally going ahead. Concerns about the valuations, questions about its location and which market, and the turmoil in the kingdom all held it back. Now, Aramco says it will float shares only on Riyadh's stock exchange. Even so, it's a scale-back IPO that could set records. The IPO is crucial as the government's plans to diversify the economy away from oil. Now, when that flow of oil stops, the money will continue. Pumping money from the IPO could raise between $15 and $40 billion. It depends, of course, on the valuation and how much actually gets listed. And then the refining through the Public Investment Fund aims to have $400 billion in assets in the next year, distributing it out into investment funds, different areas, tourism, tech and infrastructure. So you see the way that it goes from the IPO to the investments and the new ventures. Is all this going to work? John Defterios is at OPEC's headquarters in Vienna. John, the reality is that this is significant, large sums of money, but it is not what we all thought the IPO was going to be.
Yeah, this has been on the boil, Richard, as you know, for 3 years, going back to 2016. And the aspirations, to your point, Mohammed bin Salman, the Crown Prince, wanting a $2 trillion valuation. And remember, they were talking about floating 5%. New York, London, or one of the big Asian countries that are big customers of Saudi Aramco. We were talking about Tokyo, Shanghai, perhaps even Hong Kong. That did not come to the fore here. And I think they went back to Riyadh saying this is the safest play possible. They have scores of billionaires that will be encouraged, if not leaned on, to invest in the Aramco IPO. It's a sense of national pride. So you'll have Saudis investing, of course. And the CEO, Amin Nasser, saying at a press conference in Dhahran during the announcement of this IPO, they welcome the comparisons now with the big 5 international oil companies because they made $111 billion in 2018.
OK, the reality is, you and I talked earlier on Express, the transparency, the same level of transparency through the exchanges isn't there. But, John, speak to whether it's just significant that the IPO is taking place at all. The fact that this vast behemoth of the Saudi economy, I mean, it technically will change its ownership structure once it goes public.
Yes, you're not going to have the transparency of the New York Stock Exchange or London. That's a very fair point, Richard. But I think because the Saudi market has been opened up to the MSCI, the emerging market indexes, much more transparency than we would have seen 5 years ago in that market. But I think to your point, it is very important for Saudi Arabia, the kingdom, to get this thing out the door. Even here at OPEC headquarters, I think it became somewhat of a distraction because we didn't know when it was going to go out. In fact, in a private briefing we had with the Crown Prince back in 2017, he said it'll definitely happen in 2018 and sooner rather than later. But after the murder of Jamal Khashoggi, after the arrest of the Ritz-Carlton 400, the acquisition of SAPIC, the big chemical giant that Saudi Aramco took a $70 billion stake in, those are major distractions, major setbacks to the IPO process. Then you start to lose credibility if you don't get this announcement out before the end of 2019. And may I remind you, Richard, we don't know if it's 1%, 2%, or whether it comes in the first quarter of 2020 or not.